Welcome to The Jewish Lens, a podcast to discuss anything and everything from a Jewish perspective. Now, please help me welcome the man who controls the media, your host, Jonathan Rosen.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of The Jewish Lens. I'm Jonathan Rosen, and today I am thrilled to welcome the director, writers, and star of Yaniv, the funny new movie from Menemsha Films. Please help me welcome Amnon Carmi and Ben Ducoff. Amnon and Ben, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
Well, we have a lot to cover, but before we get to anything, I have to say that I reached out to you guys for an interview a few weeks ago, and you were both kind enough to invite me to a screening that you had in South Florida. I brought family, and we all loved it. So even my son, who's difficult to impress, like I was telling you before we started recording, such a fun film. But before we get to it, let's start by going back with each of you. I always like to ask guests what their family life was like, in particular with regards to Judaism, observant and all. Where's your family from? All that stuff. Amnon, let's start with you.
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in a bicultural household. My father is Israeli, so was raised speaking Hebrew, at times living in Israel as well. I went to high school there. I also lived there in my early 20s. So that's my father's side. On my mom's side, she's a cantor. So I was raised with a deep appreciation of all the ritual, the ceremony, the liturgy. The music is some of my favorite. In fact, one of the reasons I enjoy Broadway music so much is because it all has that kind of the Jewish origin in Yiddish theater and those Jewish scales, just something that is very much inherent part of me. Raised pretty secular, I would say, all things considered, with an appreciation, though, for the different branches of Judaism, especially in the conservative side of things, and growing up in a very Jewish suburb of Cleveland alongside Ben. So I think that's kind of...
Where in Israel did you move to when you were younger?
Tel Aviv.
I lived in Israel as a kid as well for a couple of years, in Gilah, by Jerusalem.
Nice, cool.
Ben, how about you?
So I grew up in Beechwood, Ohio, just outside of Cleveland with Amnon, which is a very, very Jewish area. Both my parents are American. On my mom's side, my grandfather came over from Germany in 1938. On my father's side, my grandfather was a rabbi. Both my grandparents were Jewish educators in the conservative movement. So we grew up in I would guess a slightly more religious household. We kept kosher. My parents threatened to send me to day school whenever I didn't behave at public school, Jewish summer camp. Pretty quintessential Jewish American upbringing for me.
So he came over in 30. How old was he when he came over in 38?
He was 11. It's interesting. My great grandfather, he was a war hero during World War I for the
Wow.
Germans. He was a fighter pilot. He was shot down over France and was a prisoner of war for a while. We still have his postcards actually at home. And so they were very, very proud Germans. Even after, they came over, they never, let that go. It's one of the reasons I have German citizenship. Alman has it too, actually. So you're talking to two to two Germans.
Yeah.
So your dad used to talk to you about, so he remembers vividly, like Nazi era, during that time.
Yeah, and so he came over when he was 11. When I was 11, he and my grandmother took me to Germany.
Oh, wow.
Basically trace their escape route. They were, kind of given a tip that, something bad was going to happen soon. They left right before Kristallnacht, and they, left through the Netherlands right before, the borders closed. So I went to Frankfurt where he was born. Then we went to Dusseldorf where he lived, I think he moved there when he was a baby, and we saw the Jewish school where he went. And, actually it's an interesting story. And when my grandfather was forced to go to Jewish day school, because all the Jews were kicked out of the public schools,
Yeah.
he had an art teacher. I think his name was Jacob Levine. I'd have to get back to you on the name, who was a pretty well-known artist, Jewish artist at the time, and he told the students to paint how they were feeling. And my grandfather, him and his classmates, they all made these very moving paintings, which this teacher then buried in his backyard, and he was eventually deported to Auschwitz and killed. And in like the 80s, they were uncovered, and this has now become an exhibit part of the Jewish children, which is on display at the Düsseldorf Museum. So I got to go to that museum and see my grandfather's artwork on
Incredible.
display.
There's your story for you guys right there to do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes. So as kids, were you both interested in filmmaking and performing?
definitely.
Yes.
Both actually. We were both very involved in theater from a very young age, and all throughout high school. We were even in a performing arts academy in high school in the latter 2 years of our high school careers. That was a very important part of our lives, also in our development as artists and as creatives in the performing field. In fact, the guy who played Zadie in the film
Ask about him.
was our high school theater teacher, right? So he had directed us in the past, and finally I got to direct him, which was really exciting. But just to show how important that part of our life was in the theater realm. And filmmaking also, we've been making videos together since before our voices changed. So
So who are some of the people that you admired both growing up, like, filmmakers wise?
that's a good question. I mean, I'd say the film that got me into filmmaking was Kill Bill. So Tarantino has a special place in my heart. I do feel his films have gotten a little longer for my liking. Um, but beyond that, I mean, you can list all the greats, right? Scorsese,
Hmm.
the Tarantino. Um, what I think I'm into some more kind of like out there stuff, like Gaspar Noé as well, who is his whole brand is pushing the envelope and what can be done with film. So it's always nice to see what's kind of on the cutting edge and beyond it. And obviously, this is our first feature together, so
Right,
it's
we'll have to check
it,
out their work. And Ben, how about you?
I
yeah.
was always I was always into really silly things. So I absolutely love, I think Amnon loved this. We loved Monty Python.
Hmm,
Yeah.
same.
Um, my dad showed it to us both when we were kids. I remember watching The Meaning of Life with him. I don't know if you're familiar with the Mr. Creosote scene where um, Terry Jones just plays this just enormously obese individual who walks into like a really like high class restaurant and eats so much that he just explodes and he's vomiting everywhere. We loved
That's
that. In fact, I have a memory of showing Amnon and I both showing that to Amnon's girlfriend in high school and her just being absolutely horrified and angry at us that we thought that she would enjoy that.
Yeah.
And I actually
It
just
didn't
showed
work
that
out.
my
Yeah.
students actually were studying production design and I showed them that scene and we did like a whole analysis on how you can make fake vomit, how much fake vomit you would need, I love Jim Carrey movies, Airplane, anything silly, gross. That was my jam. And then Anna and I both were hugely inspired by Tim Heidecker and Eric Wareheim. They had their show, Tim and Eric Awesome Show, Great Job, which
Mhm.
um, this really pissed off my parents. I mean, it had the worst airing time. This is like 2007. It would play on Sunday nights at 12:45 a.m. and I would always stay up to watch it. My parents were so
Of
upset.
course.
But every once in a while, my dad would come out and watch it with me and just start cracking up. So, and
Good
that
stuff.
they have a huge influence on our work. In fact, our whole how to play Yanni video is pretty much just that is our love letter to Tim and Eric. We love it.
Totally.
I,
Yeah.
I just want you to know I had a similar experience back in when I was younger, that this girl that I was, kind of interested in, I put on Blazing Saddles. She absolutely hated it. It's like, okay, this can't be. Yes.
Yeah.
So how did the two of you meet? So you met at a theater camp? How did the two of
No,
you?
I was born in Beechwood and lived there until I was 18. Amnon came over in fourth grade and we met at recess playing tetherball. And I
We had
think
nicknames. We had nicknames too. I was Chocolate Boy because I played Augustus Gloop in Willy Wonka in
Oh,
Charlie and the
that's
Chocolate
cool.
Factory,
Okay. Yeah.
and Ben was Kosher Chicken.
yeah, I was the only
Is there
kid,
a reason for that one?
yeah, well, it was,
Just obvious.
Beechwood was a really Jewish school, but not necessarily it was pretty secular. So I was one of the few kids that kept kosher. And this Raleigh really, you know, anytime I went to someone's house or to a birthday party or something, my parents had to call in advance and let the parents know that I kept kosher, which was always such a turned out to be such a nuisance. That just was my reputation that followed me. I was the one kid that kosher. So that I
That's
get,
how we met.
but yeah, that's how we met. But I think if I remember this correctly, we on Halloween that year, you and I were in separate classes, and we had like a parade of costumes where every kid would dress up and then walk through every classroom so everybody could see everybody's costume.
Right.
I decided that I was going to dress up like a homeless man or a hobo, and I just had a disgusting outfit on, and frayed gloves, a hat, and a fake cigar that I made out of something, I don't know, and I just made eye contact with Amnon, and he just started cracking up, and from then on we were
That's
friends.
great.
And then it really our families ran into each other at a supermarket a few weeks later, and we had always gotten along at recess
Right.
and trouble together, but that's when we finally were able to have like our first play date. And then I think immediately
Hit it off.
as soon as we were at each other's houses, and Alman showed me that he was really into like making claymation. He had made
Wow.
these videos of like our least favorite lunch ladies just getting completely obliterated by heavy balls, just their heads falling off. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like this is all I want to watch. I was really upset they didn't have more. And that's when he explained just how painstakingly hard it is to
They
actually
do
do it.
something like
And I was like, well, I want to do this too. Like, let's, that was our first, like, okay, we
So
can work
what
together.
was the first thing that you two did together? Do you remember what it was?
Oh, I do actually, and I still have footage of this. Also, we made it was a Julia Child's cooking show where I played Julia Childs, who was getting busted for putting drugs in her mashed potatoes, and Ben was a policeman in a whoopee cushion, a giant whoopee cushion costume, chasing me around. Um, yeah, wow, and I still have the footage too. I got to dig around for that somewhere. But we were
You guys got to
we were
post that. So,
one day. Yeah, that'll be our exclusive special content for for subscribers only.
right.
But yeah, we've been comedians from the start. I mean, and we've always taken on very like dark, definitely more like adult content. I mean,
Mhm.
we were 11 and doing these really dark like cops like tackling people in the streets, like the cops TV show kind of a thing. We were I guess a little ahead of our time in terms of uh, development and humor. Yeah,
Really
Fantastic.
inspired by body cam footage
yeah,
before
body cam,
body cam
yeah,
footage.
shaky, yeah.
Very cool. So before we get to the movie itself, can you give, for whoever's watching, the basic plot for your Yaniv? I want to hear it from you. It was such a fun film. So can you give the basic plot for it?
Yaniv is about teacher in the Bronx who loses funding for the school musical. So to earn it back, he infiltrates an underground card game run by Orthodox Jews.
And what's I was trying to like come up with a way to describe this. Can you give the basic rules of the game for Yaniv? I know you have a video about it. I'm going to try to link that as well when we post this. But you give the basic rules for Yaniv.
Yeah, well, the rules, I mean, I guess the best way to say it, and this is what always gets people engaged. It's a combination of like gin rummy, blackjack, speed. Basically, you'll play this game and you'll see that it's like a beautiful mixture of all these things. It's super engaging, and there's so many different um, combinations of strategy. It's strategy, it's luck, it's speed, it's a bit of poker. Like you gotta play it cool, and it never gets old. I mean, Ben and I have been playing it for like close to a decade now, and I mean we made a movie about it, and we still play it. So I think the specifics of the gameplay, knowing that, it'll be super easy to learn. And yeah, I think our YouTube video on how to play Yaniv is like the first search, the first
When
thing
it
that
comes
comes
up.
up if you look it up. Yeah.
I can
So
tell you a quick funny anecdote about that. That was the first thing we shot. We used it as like basically
proof
like
of
a
concept.
fundraising tool,
Right.
Yeah.
how to play Yaniv. Because we met Adam B. Shapiro, who played Mendy, probably about a year before we went into production. And we kind of came up with this idea that we'd do this together. So we shot that, we edited it, and we put it on YouTube. Fast forward like 9 months, we're shooting in Detroit, and our actress that played Mia, Lisa Loggins, who's great. She walks on set for the first time, and she sees Adam, and she freaks out. She goes, "Oh my God, you got the guy. You got the Yaniv guy. That's him." So
That's fantastic.
Suffice to say, she knew how to play by the time she came to set.
So this is what was fascinating to me. So how did the story first come about to you? I mean, what was it about this card game, which I had never heard before your movie, so I had looked it up afterward. So what was it about that made you think this would be a great plot for a film?
the first, I think it goes back to us playing the game nonstop, which was, we were playing it exponentially more during the pandemic in our little quarantine circle. And this really, well, the seedling for this was this idea that this could be a great game to gamble on. Everyone just puts money in the pot and you play a few rounds, and last person standing takes it all home. Honestly, like dreidel. And from then, we were just kind of connecting it to different aspects of our lives. And of course, I've been teaching in New York City public schools now for almost 10 years. And that's when we're like, hey, you know what? You got it, teachers who need to raise money for things, there's never enough money to do what they need to do. What if this teacher needs to get like a play off the ground? That's who I am, as a person. I've always been struggling to get performing arts programming off the ground. What if like the Hasids played this and, he went in and just dressed up and it just kind of unraveled from there. It was like Amnon and I locked eyes and we're like, this is it. This is our meal ticket. We have to write this. And then we didn't talk about anything else for 5 weeks until we had
How long did it take you, the two of you, to write the script together?
First draft, 5 weeks.
It was really 5 weeks, everything done. Wow.
5 weeks flat. We were also understand it was COVID. It was during the pandemic, and we were neighbors at the time. Like I could see into his living room from my balcony, which was so fun for me. So basically, it started
I think
as a
it takes
short
me
film.
5 weeks just to do an outline before I even start writing. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, no, totally. And believe me, like independently as well, it's a lot harder to do something like that. But we just kind of went into this collective fever state. And it started as a short film, and within a few days, it was a feature. I mean, we just knew it. And Ben and I mean, we're kind of, if there's anything at that point we were professional about, is our ability to come up with ideas together, most of which usually are terrible. And we just kind of like, we have no problem telling each other, no, that sucks, forget it. But this one, it just ignited something in us, and we just knew we couldn't rest until it was done. So 5 weeks, we got that first draft done. Obviously, it was another 17 drafts in a year later before we started filming, but there you have it. It came out of a passion, and it began really quickly, and then developed as films do in a more laborious fashion.
So what were the steps? You guys finished the script and you say, hey, we have something here. What were the steps that you took afterwards? I mean, what was the first thing that you did? You decide that you're going to make an independent film. So how did you about saying, what am I going to do now? How did you go about getting financing?
So first thing we did was we sent it to everyone that we knew in the industry just to get their take on it and see if it was even feasible. And, we got a lot of really great feedback that helped us, write drafts 2 to 17. But then, it was made clear to us that there were some elements of the script that were really going to be expensive, like building the club, filming in a casino, a lot of the, crashing through a wall, all this stuff was going to just be really, really expensive. And, there were certainly looking back on it, it's hard to put myself in those moments, but there were a few months there where we were like, this is great. It's a pipe dream. This would be great, but I think we could spend the next 10 years trying to raise money for this.
Mm-hmm.
Around the same time, I was, going, we had come back to teaching in person, and this, in New York City schools, and I think in schools all over the country and probably the world, they really had to rebuild their school culture. There was no
Yeah.
students were coming to school to learn barely. There's a lot of fear, and nobody was staying after for clubs. I mean, even teachers didn't really want to, spend too much time in the building. Um, and there was also a lot of, there was a lot of, stimulus money that was made available to launch this type of programming, specifically towards the arts. And I was sitting in a meeting where our principal was saying, hey, we have a lot of money allocated for arts programming. It has to be for arts programming, and we're going to lose it if we don't spend it. And if anybody has any ideas, please let me know. And, my ears just perked up.
That was the
And
spark.
that was the spark where I was like, okay, wait a minute. And I had also known just from being a teacher that, this idea of, learning career technical skills, project-based learning, career readiness, workforce development training. These were all big buzzwords in the city. The city was really trying to find ways to be that pipeline between school and work, and mainly career. And New York being a production hub, I immediately called up Amnon and I was like, sounds crazy, but I think we could probably do this as like an educational experience. And it's a
Hmm.
movie about a teacher in a school anyway. So let's see what we can do. So we approached the school and gave them this pitch about building a filmmaking program where students could work on a movie and learn all these skills, and they could be mentored by professionals. We explained kind of the hierarchy of set, where students could be production assistants and they could maybe, work their way up if they really,
Hmm.
learn some skills quickly. The principal was intrigued, asked us to make a budget. We made a budget that was, you know, we made this budget as if, it was a budget for a movie, and you know, we submitted it. They asked very few questions. They just
Easy.
immediately approved it. And, before, almost like overnight, like we had not everything, but we had a lot and we could quantify it. And that allowed us to, I mean, that gave us a lot of momentum and that allowed us to start fundraising. Then, we were still kind of in this gray area where like we had a lot, we had like a base, but we needed to still figure out, like, the city basically gave us a lot of equipment. They gave us a lot of, resources to pay, 18-year-olds to work on set with us. They given us a lot of that, which was huge, lot of money. But we still needed to figure out how we were actually going to build stuff and have a controlled
Hmm.
environment to shoot all this stuff. And, if you do that in New York City at like a Kaufman studio, that could be anywhere from like $500,000 to $5 million. So then, we were connected with someone named Rick Portwood, who eventually came on as an executive producer. He's based in Detroit, and he comes from the display business, and had built a career, you know with some pretty high profile clients, like including the NFL. He had done like the NFL draft, like he built all those stages, displays for department stores.
How did
Uh,
he hear about you?
so my grandfather, who escaped Nazi Germany,
Right.
he moved to Detroit, and he found he didn't found the company. It was actually my grandmother's family. It was
Hmm.
called Display Creations, and he built a career in displays. And Rick was a distant cousin. A lot of people from our family had come over from Germany and had made their way to Detroit. And when Rick was younger, he interned for my grandfather and then went off and started his own company and had
Hmm.
and took it into the 21st century, and had it. And during COVID, he had really transitioned from not just displays, but production. He could, we weren't, he wasn't doing, like showrooms anymore, but his clients now wanted to build everything, but then record it. So he immediately transitioned to that and had seen a lot of success with it. And he has a huge production facility in downtown Detroit in the old Packard plant. And he's a movie buff. So I Amnon and I went and visited him at his facility, And we basically were like, hey, you have everything here to make a movie. You've got sound stages, you've got warehouses full of props and scenery, you have lumber, you have 3D printers, you have lighting and rigging, you have crews that know how to handle all this stuff. Like you're essentially like you have a Hollywood lot in Detroit. And he saw that vision, he dug the script, he liked what we were doing with the students, and he gave us, unfettered access to
Wow.
his facility and his crew. So, without that, that sealed the deal. Then we were able to say, okay, wow, we can do this. As long as we can get everybody to Detroit, we can make this happen. And we also, I mean, we were able, we did fly out, people to Detroit, they were part of the, key creative team, but we hired a lot of local talent and
Mm.
crew there too. And, that made this possible. And we loved filming in Detroit. They used to have a great tax incentive for productions that has since gone away, but Rick is a part of a new movement now that's trying to bring it back. And Almond and I are all about, we would love to go back to Detroit and film there again. It
Mm.
is a great, New York City if you need to shoot New York without New York. And it's just a beautiful city. We just love Detroit. So we want to definitely film there again.
Oh, that is amazing. I want to say quickly before I go into the next, question there too. First that you guys were able to do this the way you did. The screening that I went to, there was you had a quick Q&A afterwards, and there was one guy, I'm sure you remember it, who was basically in tears talking about how much the two of you inspired him. Do you remember that one? That saying that how much you inspired him, that to be able to like you live the dream, and that inspired him to go about doing the same thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I do recall. It was a touching moment for us as well to hear that. I mean, I wouldn't say we lose sight of that, but chasing this dream and getting to where we have gotten, we're pinching ourselves the entire way, right? And it's so much work. It's like it's not just like you close your eyes, you open them, and suddenly that's it. You have a theatrical release. It's um it's very hard to keep things in perspective when things are just kind of they keep growing and expanding, and you realize the reach of this thing is so much bigger than you could have possibly imagined. So to hear someone share that was actually it was kind of a humbling reminder. It was
It
like,
was a
yeah, well,
very
thank
touching
you.
moment when I was there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So were there any nerves going in? I mean, you've done things before together, but this is a different now animal, different type of breed there. So, Ben with you acting, Amnon with you directing, was there like nerves like, hey, we're responsible for this big thing right now?
Yeah. Oh
It
my God.
was it was a lot of responsibility. I mean, also like I want to point out that we had to wear a million different hats.
Right.
One of the hats I had to wear was in accounting. I basically because SAG obviously you need to hire a service to pay your actors.
Mhm.
And the problem is it's very expensive. It's like you have to pay the people who pay your people.
Hmm.
So it's like I understand, it was hard for me to wrap my mind around that concept. Like you spend money to make money, right? But to spend money, I don't know how I feel about that. So one of the ways that we were able to save a lot of money is by basically bringing everyone on and being in charge of kind of like payment. So there were a lot of responsibilities between us producers, me, Ben, and Nick, our third producer, also who was instrumental in this. We had to make sure everyone was getting fed, all their travel, all their payment was coming on time, and people who needed paychecks like really at the days after it was due.
Right.
It was so I don't know if there was enough time for nerves, honestly. Like, sure, if we had time to like sit around and think about it, I'm sure we would have been, just bundles of anxiety. But there's something about doing that is kind of like liberating in itself. So when you're in it and you're just doing it, you rise to the task and you just get it done. I do think it changed our DNA. Making a feature, it's kind of like Spider-Man getting bitten by that spider. We're not the same people we were, and we talk about this pretty often. There's been an Amnon before Yaniv and been an Amnon after Yaniv, and there's no going back. Despite how stressful and crazy it was, and we have stories that would send chills down your bones. We can't wait to do it again.
Well,
So
I want to ask about some of the cast here too, because you mentioned one. You mentioned your former acting teacher. So, and you had some, and you, but I read this. You had the executive producer of Stranger Things in a role also.
So Catherine Curtin played Principal O'Donnell. She was an executive producer. She came on and joined us as an EP. We cast her about halfway through the production. Again, so much of this was building the plane as we were flying it, and we left this one role hoping to maybe bring someone in that could, their reputation could help carry us, and that she was the perfect fit. She's such a champion of indie film, but yeah, she's been in everything. She plays Officer Wanda in Orange is the New Black.
Oh
She
wow.
plays Dustin Mom in Stranger Things. She's been in Shameless. She's in another Menemsha film. She was in Bad Shabbos. She plays the
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 Gentile,
Gentile mother. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. She's
yeah.
got a great line where they're doing these like fake prayers in front of her, and she goes, "Oh, I feel like I'm at the Wailing Wall." She's great, and um, she really dug what we were doing, especially with the students who, she loved working with them. She's since come back and done some other projects with us.
Oh great.
So she's we think the world of her.
And you set up a casting call for the rest. I mean, my son was particularly impressed with also with Jonah, who played Jonah. So like, so
Oh.
you set up a casting call for everyone?
So we did set up we had a casting director in Detroit that helped us cast a lot of supporting roles. The main cast we found in a variety of places. So Adam B. Shapiro was we were looking for like a Yiddish actor to play Mendy, or someone that had experience playing Orthodox roles, and Adam was perfect for that. He's a very well-known stage and Yiddish actor here in New York, and he's done a lot of film and television, and has played Orthodox roles, in everything. He actually has his own payas that he brings an outfit. Um, he was the first actor that really like joined the project with us and also saw the vision. Jonah was played by an actor named Eli Bosky, who Amnon and I met while while the three of us were working at Miznon, which is an Eyal Shani restaurant in New York, which is, they have a bunch of locations in Manhattan, in Israel and all over the world. They had opened a new location in New York, and Amnon and I both got jobs there, and that's where we met him in the kitchen. And
Incredible.
he had just moved over from Israel and was taking acting classes at the William Esper studio, and that's how we just kind of became friends. And he always really intrigued me. I When I told him I was a writer, and I don't know what I told him, but he was like, send me whatever scripts you have, and I sent them to him, and he read them all. We would analyze them at work, and when we needed, and then then we all left that job, and he moved to LA. And then when we were trying to cast this role, it just kind of hit me. It's like, hey, I got the perfect guy. And then very serendipitously, we sent him a text. I had no idea he had moved to LA. I hadn't talked to him in a few years. And he responded saying, "This is crazy. Like, I don't live in New York anymore, but I'm in New York just visiting coincidentally. So if you want to get
Wow.
together, talk about this." And we got coffee the next day. I skipped work, and he again read the script immediately and was really intrigued. She gave us a great audition, and we cast him immediately.
I would
Annabelle,
even say also like the vision that we were building for Jonah was entirely different from what he showed us, and I was so floored by his performance in that audition tape that it just like it was worth it to change the vision for Jonah just to make it so that Eli could play
Right.
him, and
Right.
he did it. He did that character justice on every level. It's one of the most incredible characters in that film, and so dynamic. Such a character arc too.
And and the one who played Deb, you had worked with before, right? Had been with her before in something?
yeah. So Annabelle Steven, who played Deb, she and I had done theater together in Boston. We were both theater majors at Boston University, and we and she was also just kind of like Amna knew her well too. So as we were like crafting these characters, she just kind of like fit into the vision of what we were putting together, and she did a great job as well.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing. Like the work that we were, especially on this project, like we really, it was a big career leap for everybody involved, in front of the camera and behind the camera. Everybody was taking a big step, and we were really happy about that, and happy with the way it turned out as well. It was
including our students, by the way, who were 16 to 18 years old, not
I
just
was gonna
people
ask
who were
about-
like, yeah, it's on every level, at every age group. These are people who were launching themselves basically into a film career.
And you were able to get them SAG cards just by being participating in this movie.
We didn't have a choice.
That's incredible.
Those are the rules. If you have a speaking role in a union film, you are automatically
That's
SAG eligible.
fantastic. Did you have to go
Yeah.
get waivers for all of them because they were like under 18, like from parents?
you asked us earlier about what made us anxious, going into the nerves. It
Oh
was
yeah.
Sure.
everything was legally sound with these kids. Even,
Yeah.
even our school. I remember we had, you know, we were ecstatic and over the moon when when the school like greenlit this project. And then I remember I remember this meeting we had with the principal where we sat down with her and explained just how big this project was getting and how we needed, all these new waivers for our students to be on campus.
Wow.
And I remember she was just like, she started to get freaked out. I started to get freaked out. Luckily, you know, we were able to do it, but there were some moments where I was like, oh, what are we even doing? Why?
Yeah.
Oh, so you had the film made, so you get the film made, and then this was fantastic to me. So you talked about the process you went through. You started setting up screenings yourselves?
Yeah, so we didn't have, after we screened it, first of all, by the time we got through post-production, we were out of money. We didn't have enough money to even send it to festivals. So
And I edited it too. So like it wasn't even, we didn't pay someone to do that. It was just very much, the bank was empty. It was just crazy.
You did a great
Oh.
editing job, by the way, but yes.
Thank you. Yeah.
So and then also we started to kind of shop it around. You can, if you go on like any distributor's website, like you can submit a screener, and they'll check it out. And we got, feedback from companies who basically said like, good film, looks great, can't sell it. There's nobody recognizable in this. And that was when Amnon and I were like, oh, geez, yeah, you're right. I guess no one in here is famous. What are we gonna do? So, but we were so in it. We had made the damn thing. So we were gonna, and we knew it was good. We knew we had something on our hands here. So we were like, let's prove them all wrong. Fuck them. So first we went to Detroit and we called up a theater and asked them what the cheapest night was just to rent, one of their screening rooms. And it was pretty, we realized it was pretty affordable. So we advertised it, sold tickets. Almond's got a background in graphic design and animation. So that's allowed us to become like a two-man marketing team essentially. So we put out Facebook ads, Instagram ads,
Merch.
merch. We called up JCCs, synagogues. The first article we ever got is from the Detroit Jewish News. Big thanks to them. And we packed the house. We were the first one was like, we had a lot of people in Detroit that were associated with the film. So, they all brought their families and everything. And of course we comped them, we didn't charge them tickets, but we sold out. And then, everybody on their way out was like, keep doing it. This you might have something here. So then we did Boston, DC. We just went all over, but it was miserable because, we're both working. We would get lucky if we could get a weekend show, but it was normally like, we'd finish work, go rent a car, drive 3 hours to some
Wow.
random, and
Sometimes in the rain.
Yeah.
Like
staying with, family, or, if we knew absolutely no one, we'd get like the cheapest hotel. Sometimes the accommodations would be so bad that we would just say, let's just drive back right now. So there's a lot of like lonely, cold, wet nights eating McDonald's at 3 a.m., living the dream, as they say.
it was though. I mean, it
really
but
is.
we were doing it. Yeah.
So here's what was happening behind the scenes, which we didn't know about. We'd call these indie cinemas where we could get to the owner immediately, um, rent the theater, and then they would be really confused because they'd be like, "Why is this Jewish movie calling us?" We usually go through Menemsha; they're the Jewish film rep, so they would call up Menemsha and say like, "What? Why is your film reaching out to us directly, and why only for one night? This makes no sense to us." So that's how Menemsha first started to get a hold on us. But it all came to a giant crescendo in Boston because usually aside from Detroit, we would be lucky if we could get 50, 60 people to show up. And that would allow us to make back, the rental fee and allow us to take home some, put some money in the bank. But we show up in Boston, or I should say Newton, at West Newton Cinema. And I remember this so clearly. We took a cab there. We were both staying with like friends and family on couches. We meet up, we get an Uber, we take it to the theater, we get out, and there's a line out the door. And we're like,
Hmm.
what is this? Did we really do that great of a job? And the reason that there were so many people there is because that theater had been hosting Boston Jewish Film Festival for the past week. But we were so good about booking these cinemas in advance that we got to this cinema before Boston Jewish Film Festival did. So this was supposed to be their
You didn't know
marquee.
that the Jewish festival was going to be there? You just booked the theater?
We didn't know anything about Jewish Film
Wow.
Festival. We knew there was a Cleveland Jewish Film Festival just from
Okay.
growing up with kids. We had no idea that there were like 147 of them in America alone, and that they were like probably the most well-attended film festivals in the world right now. We knew none of that. And we get there, and people are, we had like a list of people who had bought tickets in advance, but people are now saying, "Oh no, it's okay. Like I have the Boston Jewish Film Festival like festival pass. Like I bought the whole thing. I can see every movie I want for free. All I do is show up." And we're like, "What are you talking about? We don't accept that. Cash money, please." And so they're starting to get confused. Then we screen the film. It's a big hit. We do the Q&A afterwards, and someone raises their hand and says, "I just want to thank you for being a part of Boston Jewish Film Festival." And that's when was like, "We're not part of Boston Jewish Film Festival." And it was like there was an uproar, like, where are we? What are we
Yeah.
doing here? And when we got home, that like the following Monday, Neil Friedman from Menemsha called us and was like,
That's fantastic. I've had Neil on the show, and he was great talking to. So he just reached out to you like this?
Literally,
"Yeah,
email said, "Hi, Menemsha would like to represent this film."
That's incredible.
And we were like, "Oh, thank God," because we were at our wits' end. It was getting so intense. We were starting to think ahead and look ahead and be like, "Yeah, we're making money," but we were just kind of like grasping at that point. We're like, "How are we going to make this profitable? How are we going to make back our budget?" Which has always been our goal, by the way, and we are on track to do it, which is phenomenal. So luckily, we were able to put that aside because Neil took us in, and that began the next phase of our process, which was Neil started us out in the festival route. As Ben
Yeah.
mentioned,
Yeah.
yeah, there are well over 150 Jewish film festivals in the U.S. alone, and
Oh,
so Neil was kind of testing the waters. Also, he had heard about us, he knew about the film, but he couldn't see for himself how people were reacting. So I remember he threw us a bone. We booked the Manhattan JCC for a big event. We sold out like a week in advance, and it was a total hit. And it really launched us on our festival route. So we've now been in over 50 festivals
wow.
over the course of basically a little over a year, internationally in 10 different countries. Just in January, Ben and I, not only had we finished wrapping production with 80 high school students on another project, so just so you know, like we haven't stopped doing that, but literally the 3 days later, we were on a plane to France to play in 3 different cities.
Amazing. Amazing.
Um, yeah, so things took off and have been taking off. And then that brings us to, end of March, where we started our North America theatrical release. We premiered in South Florida, and we've been there now, 4 weeks, and we're moving on to other markets. It's crazy. It's
Incredible. So I before we get to other things, I'm just curious though, after watching the movie, you both talked about that, there were like Chabad involved in something in some capacity. How has the reception been from like Orthodox groups with this?
oh, it's been great."
Yeah.
yeah,
They they've really they really get a kick out of it. And in the there, whenever we go to any city, at least, especially when we're self-distributing, we really relied on Chabads to help get the word out. They, of course, wanted to screen the film before
Right.
they recommended it. And they would always call us afterwards and say that was cute, that was funny. Thanks for that. Even during production, we needed a place for holding one night when we were filming in Regal Park in Queens, and no one was getting back to us. My dad said, call Chabad, they'll always call you back, and which is true. And we quickly gave the elevator pitch to the Chabad rabbi at Chabad of Regal Park. He was like, "That's hilarious. Sure, yeah, absolutely." And he let our whole crew just come and crash for the evening. We had an overnight shoot, and he and only in exchange for us doing tefillin with him. That was the best part.
I,
We were so nervous because, he was like, yeah, sure, come over. Click. That was it. And we didn't discuss payment. So we were like, we don't have a choice. We have to do this. But we were just praying that it wasn't going to be expensive because we were running out of money already. And yeah, we were like, we exchanged niceties, and then we're like, so what's it going to cost? And he's like, you just have to wrap tefillin with me. And at first we thought he said it in such a kind of lighthearted way that it was kind of a joke. And I actually laughed. And then he pulled out a bag of tefillin. And so we wrapped tefillin. And the funniest part of all of this is when Ben was wrapping tefillin, the rabbi pulled out his flip phone and took a photo. And within a minute, Ben received that exact same photo from his dad. So what happened is that the Chabad rabbi of Regal Park knew that we were from Cleveland. So he texted that photo to the Chabad rabbi of Cleveland, who immediately recognized Ben and texted it to Ben's dad, who then texted it back to Ben in a minute flat. Like, Instagram's got nothing on these guys. It's incredible. It's so, and it was such a heartwarming kind of tale to tell behind the scenes. Like this production was Jewish through and through, in so many ways. And yeah, it was just, we had a lot of support from the Jewish community in all branches of Judaism. I think Ben mentioned we had a rabbinical consultant on set as well to make sure everything stayed kosher, so to speak. And just keep, we were very careful. We did not want to lean into any Jewish stereotypes. This is a positive Jewish story about about the morality of the Jewish people and our traditions and our ways and how we handle hardship and mischief and troublemakers as well. And we didn't want it to be schlocky humor either. We wanted something that was original and could stand on its own for a non-Jewish audience as well. And we do, obviously it mainly attracts a Jewish audience, but we definitely get a solid amount of people who are not Jewish who enjoy the film all the same. And we try to leave enough context.
I don't think you have to be Jewish. But you also definitely cannot be incognito in a Chabad. They get you, but they're very welcoming. I go to Chabad myself, and they're very yeah. So, all right, there was a little bit of elusiveness by both of you at the theater during the screening. I have to ask anyway: are you aware of any underground Yaniv gambling places?
We can neither confirm nor deny that these actually exist, but
you saw it with your own eyes. I mean, who's to prevent you from picking up your friends in a big white van? There's potential anywhere in the world for a Yaniv club to exist.
I will say also that the majority of our crew was not Jewish, and even though we could neither confirm nor deny while we were filming it, they were all fully. This is real. This is 100% real.
Yeah, we had. I believe it was our script supervisor who on the last night was like, so these are real, right? And we're like, wow, we convinced you. That's a good sign. Yeah.
That's fantastic. I think we got a Yaniv deck from you. We were playing a little bit.
Oh, good. Nice. Yeah.
So the movie has started out now. It's going from market to market now. So what's the next thing for you? You were in South Florida. So where's the next place now?
So South Florida is big. There's a few markets in South Florida. We're moving into Broward County, like Fort Lauderdale area, and then into Dade, Miami-Dade. So next, we're actually opening up in Hollywood at Cinema Paradiso on the 25th. After that, we'll probably move up to like Gateway Cinemas in Fort Lauderdale. And then, we really, this is an ongoing conversation right now between us and Menemsha. What's our next market going to be? I think right now we're thinking either Cleveland or Boston. We're still young and making a name for ourselves in the film. So I think we're gonna stick to like one media market at a time, but we're hoping that as the film gains kind of like a following and almost like culty status, that we'll be able to kind of maybe do two cities at once,
Hmm.
three cities at once, and then eventually, the goal obviously is to get to like New York, Chicago, and LA, and in these big markets and play for a while there. Menemsha is really interesting. One of the few like true indie distributors that's, successful putting movies into theaters.
Hmm.
They do a really good job at that, and they do a really good job at putting movies into theaters for a long time. I think their record is 72 weeks.
I
And I
remember
think,
Neil mentioning that. Yes. So,
yeah, yeah. I mean that and films like Bad Shabbos, which was just that movies of Devil Before Us, like they did like 3 months.
wow.
These movies stick around for a while. So I see us, kind of fitting into that um algorithm there.
I've
Yeah.
I've seen many Menemsha films through the years, and you're just such a natural fit. So I'm glad Neil found you. It's your movie with their brand.
We are too. Yeah.
Yes.
Without a doubt. Yeah.
So what comes next for the two? I know you have a lot of work still to do with Yaniv and still marketing and everything. Have you already discussed your next project together?
Yeah,
Certainly.
so with Rick Portwood, who um, was our EP
Mhm.
that out of Detroit, he's been developing for a while a heist thriller set in Detroit in 2008 called Squeeze.
During the Great
But
Recession.
yeah, but
Period piece,
yeah,
believe it or not, at this point. Yeah.
some guys that it's just another caper, honestly, just some guys that try to stage a robbery across the river in Windsor, Ontario. So it's an international heist. Um,
Yeah. Technically. Yeah.
we're we're excited about that.
Oh, fantastic. I look forward to
And
it. You guys like one-word titles.
Yeah,
yeah,
one
we're,
word
we're
you
into
need
that.
titles.
Before I forget, okay, I want to go back to your acting teacher. So I was supposed to ask this there too. Was he in anything else? Because my son and I swear that we recognized him from something else.
He's been in a few things. He was in the film Proximity with Rob Lowe. They actually filmed that in Cleveland. That was, I think, early 2000s or maybe even the 90s.
Hmm.
Um, he's you know he is Mitchell is a he's a very multi-talented guy, probably one of the most brilliant men I've ever met in my life, and
And a
an
phenomenal teacher,
a
too, by the way.
phenomenal teacher. So he is a film, academic and historian. He was a film professor at Baldwin Wallace College outside of Cleveland for many years. In fact, I take a lot of my own film curriculum directly from him. He's been mentoring me in that for a long time now, and he's an incredibly talented theater actor and director, and has been in shows all over Cleveland, and as an actor and as a director. So I mean, his acting chops really comes from theater. He's done films here and there, and certainly knows how to act for the camera, and he teaches that as well. Um, but more theater accolades than
Yeah.
Well, say Ben, you was really so good at that film. You seemed so natural there too. I was going to ask if you now has the acting bug fully caught you. You plan on being starring in the next one as well?
That's everybody asks me that. I do. I have acting training. I studied it in high school and in college, and whenever as a producer, like whenever I can say whenever the mood strikes, I will jump into it. I love doing it. I will say I don't know if I want to continue to produce and act at the same time. It's really hard to get into the moment when you have like the guy who owns the whatever location you're at, like looking at you going, all
Right.
right,
Yeah.
take. That is tough. In our last film that we just wrapped, I I am in it, but only for a split second. But I picked my role well. I get to rob someone. So, and then something falls on me. But I enjoy acting. I certainly look forward to acting again, but I think my true calling is producing because I get to do.
And Amnon, you're going to direct it?
Yeah, I love directing. I also love editing. I mean, I would love to keep doing those two things, and also minor appearances,
It's here there.
unrecognizable appearances as well. I kind
I
of like
won't
that.
spoil it. Yes, Amnon is in the film. I
Yeah.
won't spoil it. See if you can find out where he is.
Totally.
Well,
Bonus points if you recognize me.
well, how can people follow you and Yaniv on social media?
Well, we're all over social media. Yaniv Film is our Instagram account. YanivFilm.com is our website. We're very active on both. We have series on Jewish cooking, on behind the scenes of how Yaniv was made, all sorts of fun little goofy animations for holidays, etc. So please give us a follow, and you can find both me and Ben in our personal accounts through there, no problem as well. So that's how you reach us.
Well, I want to thank you both for coming on. It was a pleasure. I definitely recommend everyone go see this movie. Love the movie. It was very funny, very sweet at the same time, and a lot of touching moments in there. So I definitely recommend it. And again, it's Yaniv. But thank you guys again for coming.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. Thanks for
pleasure.
See it, bringing your son, your family.
Yes.
For the opportunity. It's great.
It's nice to meet you.
Yes, it was. But again, this has been The Jewish Lens. I'm Jonathan Rosen. And again, a very special thanks to Amnon Carmi and Ben Ducoff. And please like, comment, and subscribe.
Thanks for tuning in to The Jewish Lens, where all items used was strictly kosher.